From the Arizona Daily Star and Tucson.com, this is the Wildcast.
Thanks for listening to the Wildcast podcast. Justin Spears alongside Michael Lev and sports editor Brett Fera. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and comment the Wildcast podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And also, please be sure to download the Wildcaster mobile app today, where you'll get all of our updates on Arizona football and their big game against number 20 UCLA on Saturday. Plus basketball season right around the corner here. I mean, this upcoming week, right? This is when it all...
Yeah. Special section coming out, right? Sunday's paper.
Games are official.
We think.
Longer exhibition games. So
real games start Monday.
Real games.
Yes. The women's team is on the road against New Mexico State.
Going, right?
And to Las Cruces again.
You and Brian Peterson?
No.
Carpooling?
No, we're not going this time. And the men's team plays Morgan State at home in their opener. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Before visiting Duke on Friday. So jumping into the deep end right away.
Big one for basketball coming up here. And Bruce Pascoe will be providing all of our coverage along with PJ Brown. And you can find all that on Tucson.com. But, guys, we got a big one on Saturday. Arizona versus UCLA. And I'll never forget a few weeks back, Lev, when Jedd Fisch came strutting into the press conference room at USC. And the first thing that he said was this 21.5-point underdog thing, I think, has to come to an end. And pretty much said that Arizona has been a little underestimated, and they come out time and time again, and they prove people that they are, in fact, a legitimate team. Now they're on the cusp of going to a bowl game for the first time in 6 years, but they're playing a tough UCLA team that is a 1.5-point favorite. So it's a very even game, and it looks like the odds makers are like, yeah, Jedd Fisch, we're buying it. Yeah, you guys are no longer 21.5-point teams. You guys are good. I
mean, I've got 3 as the current spread, but still UCLA's favored.
Yeah.
And I guess they probably deserve to be.
Good defense.
Very, very good defense. They're ranked in the top 20.
That travels.
In the latest CFP poll. So, I mean, it kind of has and it kind of hasn't adjusted as far as Vegas goes and the odds makers. They're still an underdog in all these games, and they keep beating the spread over and over and over. Correct me if I'm wrong, Justin, but the only game they've lost against the spread was the game in which they were favored against Stanford.
Yeah.
Right? So they did win as a favorite a few times early against, NAU and UTEP and those types. But in all the games that they've been underdogs, they have beaten the spread.
Mm-hmm.
So that will be put to the test again in a game where, it's a field goal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's even less than what the game went off last week, which I think it ended up last week at 2.5 by closing odds. But it was around between 3.5 and 5.5 that Oregon State was favored last week. Arizona, of course, ended up winning outright.
Yep.
And we will discuss later in the podcast whether that will happen again. But I am very intrigued in this game. I wrote about this for Cat Stats. Awesome pass rushers over on the UCLA side. They've got Leatu Latu, and they've got the Murphy twins, Gabriel and Grayson, and they all have 40, and 41 QB pressures this season, which is basically twice what the leaders of Arizona have. They have those 3 guys have more combined QB pressures than Arizona's entire team.
Yep.
And they are going against Jordan Morgan, who is projected to be a first-round pick, maybe a second-round pick in this upcoming draft, as is Latu. And they're going up against Jonas Sabanaya, who has been really good since becoming a Wildcat, but struggled a little bit the last couple weeks. And as I also noted in Cat Stats, I think it's important to have some perspective about him. He's still a really young player.
Yeah.
And he hasn't played that many games at tackle. So these are all learning experiences for him.
Yeah.
And now comes the big test against these dudes who they can wreck your offense. So how does Jedd Fisch handle that schematically? How did those blockers handle those guys individually? And how does Noah Fifita deal with the whole thing? Because we've never really seen Noah get rattled in any shape or form. So how does that play out? To me, that's the key to the game.
But we have seen Noah get under pressure and be able to handle it. I mean, there were times against Washington State where, I know it was a 38-point win, but there were a few times, like you said, that Jonas Sabanaya struggled, so Brennan Jackson was able to get into the backfield, and they were really bringing the pressure. And it seemed like no matter what kind of pressure they brought, Noah has a special ability to adapt and kind of bend and move himself to where he can get the ball out and not get batted down. As I think you've pointed out a couple weeks ago, people always knock Noah for his size, but like Noah's always been that size, and he's had to learn how to play with that size. So I think that even though UCLA is going to bring the pressure, there's just something about Noah that I don't think it'll phase him. Now, will this probably be the most pressured he's been all season? I think so. This is an elite pass rush. This is probably the best pass rush they'll face all season long, but they've also played against decent pass rushes in Washington, Oregon State, and Washington State. So I think in a lot of ways, they're really battle-tested for this game.
Yeah, I feel like there are teams that we buy into in this league, and there are teams that we don't buy into, and I'm not really sure where UCLA falls in that regard. Brett, what do you think about the Bruins, their resume,
kind of there,
how they've looked so far? Washington State, it seemed like, in retrospect, was not a legit top 20 team. Is UCLA a legit top 20 team?
I'm gonna kind of go on a tangent because you just said something that is how I look at UCLA and what Arizona possibly can do. And you guys know I have not until this past week. I don't know if I picked Arizona this past week. I thought I did.
You did, yes.
But
I think we all did.
But
we all did.
I
yes.
hadn't been.
That's one of the few things we all got
for
right.
most of the
But anyway.
season. I hadn't been, other than obviously the first couple games in Stanford and stuff. So I'm saying this not as a homer, but something very interesting, and how you just brought up that, well, is Washington State as good as they were projected to be? Maybe not. Was UCLA as good as they were projected to be? Maybe not. Oregon
USC.
State. Sorry, I meant USC. I apologize. Okay. Yeah, USC. Oregon State, maybe not. Well, what's the common denominator? Playing Arizona and Arizona kind of breaking them.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard that from a few places. So I do think UCLA is deserving of where they're at, but I also think that they are kind of prime for a situation like this where Arizona, if they don't have a letdown, which we've all talked about, can go in and actually expose some of UCLA's potential weaknesses that we don't even see.
Yeah.
And that's what they've been able to do the last 3 games is they've exposed these teams. And then what's happened? The next team is, if you're ASU, did you not watch, if you're Kenny Dillingham, did you not watch Arizona, Washington State 4 times that week and then go out and, not literally the same thing, but go out and know exactly how to beat them? They absolutely did.
They did. Because Scatterboo ran all over the place.
I mean, USC the week after or 2 weeks after against Cal. Like, Arizona is giving other teams blueprints right now. So to answer your question, yes, I think UCLA is deserving to be there, but we will know soon enough within the next 48 hours or less that if Arizona can do this again, because that's the most interesting thing about the last 3 games. It's not just an almost win and 2 wins. It's they've exposed these teams.
Yeah.
Or they've broken them, which is kind of a cooler way to look at it. Like, these were good teams that they made bad. That's kind of the fun way to take a look at it.
UCLA definitely, statistically, legitimately good on defense. They rank high nationally in a bunch of different categories. And I talked about the edge rushers. They've got a new defensive coordinator, DeAnton Lynn, who's really done a great job turning them around. Something to ask Jed about today when we talked to him, Justin, is there was a reference to the Vic Fangio type of scheme, and Jed is close to Vic Fangio, so I wonder if he's called up Vic Fangio this week and was like, hey, how do we defeat your defense?
Give us the details.
Offensively, I don't know if UCLA is as legit, right? I mean, they've had a lot of quarterback kind of uncertainty. They were going with Dante Moore for a while. Now they're going with Ethan Garbers. They do run the ball well. And Johnny Nansen talked about how Chip throws a lot at you.
Yep.
So that's always a challenge. But they did see them last year,
I mean,
too. And then they had DTR last year, and they don't have DTR this year.
If we're looking at resumes, you could very much argue Arizona's resume is better. Even as much as we argued, the 3 of us walking out at 2 a.m. from the stadium arguing should Arizona get we were kind of, I don't want to speak for Justin, but I was kind of making the fans argument to Lev before the top 25 poll that maybe Arizona should be ranked, but I mean, understandably why they're not.
Every game.
Well, Coastal Carolina, San Diego State, North Carolina Central, they lost to Utah. They beat Washington State by 8. They lost to Oregon State. There's interesting dynamics of how Arizona's played the last few weeks, and then they did the not common denominator is they blew out Stanford.
Yeah.
So you compare these two things, and to me, it's going to be really fascinating. One of the most interesting things Jonathan Smith said after the Oregon State game, I thought, was that somebody asked him about how their offense played against Arizona's defense. And he said, "Are you asking me if I think we should have been able to score 28 points? Absolutely, no questions asked." He basically was saying, as much as he got into that room and he took the heat before anyone even asked for the fake field goal attempt and what that meant, he goes, none of that lost the game. We lost the game because we couldn't score 28 points. So he was in a weird way complimenting Arizona's defense and saying that, yes, Arizona held us, or Arizona scored 27 themselves, but they held us to 24.
Yeah.
We couldn't score 4 touchdowns. And so Arizona's been in a lot of these games, UCLA, not so much Washington State, but against teams that don't have great USC, I'm sorry, I keep doing that. Against teams that don't have great defenses. And Oregon State was the first test. We talked about it with their kind of, that should have been a good defense, and Arizona got enough to win. But it was their defense that held them. So to your point about UCLA's offense, I think is right on, Lev, that like if Arizona can duplicate what it did against Oregon State, it doesn't need to score 40.
Well,
Oregon State could have had 27 points, by the way.
For sure.
Very easily. Not 28, but they could have had 27. They had just
Kicked a field goal.
I see a low-scoring game.
Me too.
Saturday night, and we'll get to, I guess, our more specific predictions on that in a little bit. You want to get into the picks?
No,
Justin, or not quite yet?
Real quick, no, I was going to say, like, this week is kind of interesting because, we were wondering, coming out of the bye week, after just mollywhopping Washington State, will you be able to handle the pressure of, like, okay.
Or avoid the letdown, right?
Avoid the letdown. Like, you guys are playing good football right now. You guys are playing a ranked opponent. How are you going to be able to do that? And I thought maybe there was a possibility that Arizona would have that letdown game against Oregon State, but they came out, they took care of business, and now I've seen way too much Arizona football, guys, to realize that this might be the letdown game this week. And I think about the 2015 game against UCLA here in Tucson when College Game Day was in town, and Rich Rodriguez went on College Game Day and made a big deal about number 33, Scooby Wright, coming back from injury and playing in that game. And then UCLA came in and took care of business, and it was just the ultimate letdown game. I'm wondering, how is Arizona going to handle now the attention is really on the Wildcats to see if they are, in fact, a really good team and if they can continue to get these wins over really good opponents.
Someone in the group chat that I have, we talk about Arizona football a lot, made the point that they haven't had a stinker this year. Right? Even, their losses have been
like
in overtime by 7 points against the top, team that's ranked 5th in the country right now. Is that coming, or maybe it won't happen at all?
Yeah.
On that note, from an individual standpoint, I have a weird question, and I'm asking this for a reason, not to play hyper negative devil's advocate, but do any of us think Noah Fafita played really great against Oregon State?
No.
Great.
No, I think I gave him a
good thing.
He played really good.
I gave him a B.
He played good.
That's my point. That's a good thing, though. They didn't need his best effort. They didn't need Tetero McMillan to catch 14 passes for 200 yards. Like, that was why Oregon State, to me, is the benchmark of the season, and obviously from a bowl standpoint and higher, the linchpin for the rest of the year, just because that wasn't the greatest statistical showing. They didn't. Justin, you've been talking a lot about the 05 UCLA game, Arizona, Willie Tui Thomas first start. Arizona played amazing that game. Did everything humanly possible, kind of like they did against Washington State.
Yeah.
They didn't against Oregon State, and they just beat a good team.
Yeah.
And that is why I think, to your point, like, yes, the letdown could happen, but also they've done this a few times already now. They've this whole thing about playing a ranked team and not being ranked, that's what this year is.
Well, and they've, that game against Oregon State, they outclassed Oregon State at every phase, I would say, right?
Yeah.
Offense, defense,
including
and
a quarterback.
special teams.
Noah Fafita was a B, but still outclassed both Oregon State quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
DJ Youngulele ended up 16 for 30 in that game. And Noah was once again super high percentage. We talked about this with Noah earlier in the season. That's the high floor.
Yeah.
That's it with him. Like, even if
that's
it wasn't like
that
his
was
best game, if I gave him, I'm looking at the grade right now, I gave him a B.
Yeah.
Hey, solid B. Good. That is good enough to win.
Yeah.
It was proved on the field, good enough to win against a high quality opponent.
What were your grades for him against USC and Washington State?
Okay, now you're making me do some digging here.
Well, probably A's, I'm assuming, in both of those.
Let's see.
Or close. So he's got like a 3.75 GPA. Like
I gave him a B+ against USC. Okay. I gave him an A against Washington State.
And then Washington was the other one.
I need to find.
Probably.
I think everyone got an A against Washington State.
That was, I think I gave the offensive line a B+ in that game. That was the only. But I definitely had that thought. I was like, does everyone deserve it here? I'll try to look that up here. Real quick.
My point is though, is like it's the cumulative element of it. He's played very great, which we know. He's earned the new Mr. October for Arizona football, 3 Freshman of the Week awards, and yet he didn't have to be his best self. He could withstand a mistake. You know, it wasn't that much on him, but it was still through a pick. Like it was, I liked that game better than the Washington State game in that sense. Not just because it was tight, but because nothing was perfect, and they were just a better team on the field.
I gave him a B against Washington. Also, remember they were kind of a little conservative to start that game. That was his first start. A little slow to get going, as happens. Speaking of Mr. October, Khalil Tate's going to be in the house.
The Desert Ghost?
The Desert Ghost and Gronk. And Khalil did a video this week promoting the fact that Gronk and I are going to be in the building. Gronk is the honorary captain, but Khalil
I
Tate,
double checked. I was like, are they doing double honorary captains? And no, Gronk is the main one.
Khalil Tate was literally like, I don't want to get anyone in trouble from an NCAA standpoint, but watching the USC game out in LA, where he's obviously from,
like right behind Jet Fish.
He was an extra coach.
Yeah.
He's hanging out near the. He's hanging out on the bench near the quarterback. Maybe he was
helping them.
He's got his arm on tape.
Maybe he was helping them
steal signs.
Maybe he's helping them steal signs.
Oh God, don't start. He's a Desert Ghost.
It was just so funny because he posted on his Instagram story where he's like, my view of the game, and it was like Jet Fish like bent over getting ready to watch a play, and I'm like, how is Khalil this close? Who gave him these passes? But yeah, it's going to be a fun one on Saturday against UCLA. And you think about this, like one of the storylines of this team, especially on the defensive side of the ball, is how much the 2022 guys have really impacted and how much they have grown up. And you think about that win against UCLA last year when they go to the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. Heck, Arizona's never played for a Rose Bowl, and this is the last time they may ever play in the Rose Bowl against UCLA. And they won, and a big part of it was their young defensive players really stepping up.
I've been thinking about this quite a bit lately, and this will be our last point before we get into our Pac-12 picks. This is shaping up to be a really good year for Arizona, but if they can keep this team together next year, they might be really good because they have so many contributors who are sophomores.
I was just going to say, like, oh, man, I have a point I want to make. Don't cut me off before the picks. You just made it. That's it. I totally agree. Reading your story about that earlier this week, Justin, it's exactly what went through my head the whole time. Is like, they could get to 8 wins this year, legitimately. Yeah. What about next year with the entire group, minus a Jacob Cowing and a Michael Wiley, but deep at both of those positions, relatively speaking, at least at the top of both those positions.
And totally different schedule next year.
Big 12.
Which came out the other day. Real quick, in case you missed it, the home games next year are ASU, Colorado, Texas Tech, Houston, and West Virginia. And the road games are BYU, Utah, TCU, and UCF. They will also face Kansas State in a non-conference game, previously scheduled. But they are getting 3 of the newcomers to the Big 12. Mm-hmm. And those teams have been struggling a little bit to make that transition to the new world of Power 5, or I don't know what we're going to call it next year, Power 4. I don't know. I kind of feel like going into the Big 12 next year, it's kind of wide open. And
you see conference records so far this year.
Yeah.
UCF 0-5.
Yeah, we talked about this.
Houston 1-4. Texas Tech 2-3. TCU 2-3. Kansas State's 4-1. But like it's non-conference, so
so it doesn't matter.
It's preseason. It's like an exhibition in basketball. Just go out there with 8 players. Let's play 8-man football.
12-team playoff next year. I'm saying non-zero chance. Wow. Arizona's a contender for that.
There's a non-zero chance Arizona's in the top 12 at the end of this year.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's like higher than 10%, but like
if they can keep the team together, which is always a challenge in this modern world. Okay, so last week,
picks?
Yes, Justin is like
I just want to move on.
He's on to week 10.
We're on to this week.
Justin was 2-4 against the spread, and the effect of that is that I went 3-3, and Brett went 4-2. Is we're all within one game of one another in the against the spread season-long standings. Justin is 28-24-1, and Brett and I are both 27-25-1.
That's the equivalent of Oregon State scoring that long touchdown in the last 3 minutes. That's what Justin did last week. He just let us feel like we're in it. He's going to stomp on our hearts.
Which we shall see. Oh, straight up, I'm 45-8. Brett is 42-11, and Justin is 39-14. But as we all know, good teams win and great teams cover. So
yes, sir.
The against the spread is where it's at. Our first game this week features Arizona State at Utah. This game is on Pac-12 networks. It starts at 11 a.m. So early kick, a noon kick in Salt Lake City, 11 a.m. here, as we have one more day. We're still on Pacific time. The Utes are favored by only 11, which is kind of weird, right?
Only?
Kind of weird. I think this is partially because they looked so bad last week. Like they just looked like they just ran out of gas against Oregon. Arizona State broke through and won, as predicted by me and only me last week. And
almost put up 40. I mean, against a bad team, but like.
So, kudos to the Sun Devils. They were my pick to click as well, and I'm going to go in the opposite direction this week and pick against them. I am going to take Utah to cover. I just don't think that's going to happen twice in a row. Kyle Whittingham will rally the troops. ASU will have a letdown coming off their first win. They're not ready for the physicality that Utah's going to bring. Utah's going to be angry. This is a weird spread. It should be higher. I'm taking the Utes and giving the 11.
Utes win and cover. They're going to win by 17 points at least, I would say. They only lost 2 games prior to last Saturday. They'd only lost 2 games since 2018. Like they just
at home.
Yeah. Yep. At home. They don't lose at Rice-Eccles Stadium. But when they do lose, it's to teams that are probably going to be contending for a college football playoff spot. Oregon, that was a statement win for them more than I'd say a Utah disappointment. But with that being said, there's not going to be another letdown. I'm going to go with the Utes to win and manhandle Arizona State.
I think the same. I think Utah's going to win and cover, and I don't think it has any bearing on how either of the teams are right now. I think it's just that Utah is not as bad as they played. ASU is not as good as they played,
but ASU fights.
They will fight. I think they're going to fight on the day after, 2 days after Thanksgiving. But I don't think they can sustain what they did last week.
Yeah,
doesn't mean they're not going to put an effort in though.
All right,
2:30 p.m. We got another game on Pac-12 networks. This is Cal at Oregon. Oregon is favored by 24.5 points in this game. Oregon came out at number 6 in the first CFP rankings. Cal put up a great fight against USC in a very entertaining game for many, many reasons. Last week, there was a protest on the field before the game. We had a reversal on a timing sequence that led to a field goal attempt to start the third quarter that was still part of the second quarter. And then Justin Wilcox called a timeout to freeze the kicker, and then they missed the kick. I don't know. I've never seen anything like it. And on Pac-12 networks, during the halftime show, they never even mentioned that any of it was happening. It was all very strange. Very Berkeley, I guess you could say. So I think that Oregon is the best team in the conference. I think Oregon might be the best team in the country. And I'm going to take Cal to beat the 24.5 in this game, despite what I just said. For the simple reason that this is a potential letdown situation or sandwich game for the Ducks. They are coming off that huge win against Utah. They've got USC next week. Maybe Cal won't have their full attention for the first half or so. I can see Oregon winning by 21, Cal covering that 24.5.
What's JW's connection to Oregon? Or is it Washington?
Oh, no, he does have one.
Justin Wilcox?
Yeah, he does have one.
Okay.
I think he played there, or his dad coached there. Yeah.
Okay. I feel like this is a very personal game for Justin Wilcox. And the one thing about his team is that they fight. They've been fighters all season long. I mean, they've had their moments of letdown, but
he
is
played at Oregon.
So he played at Oregon.
Yeah.
This is a very familiar game or very personal game for him.
Born in Eugene. We gotta like your quarterback. Got a little Justin Herbert action there.
Give me Cal to cover because they're a great team. Great teams cover. But Oregon's going to win, of course.
All right, Brett, what do you got?
I think Oregon's going to win and cover. I think worse. I don't think it was a hard-fought win or hard-fought game for Cal because I know it's USC, but it's a mediocre USC team, one that Arizona broke. No, and you're up 14 in the fourth. You can't lose that game.
Yeah,
you just can't.
All right.
Okay, we are moving on to our next game. This is maybe the game of the day. It should definitely be an entertaining game, a high-scoring game. The over/under for number 5 Washington at number 20 USC is 76.5. Woof is right. This game is at 4:30 p.m. It is airing on ABC. Washington is favored by a field goal at USC. Justin, you can go first on this one. What do you got?
Where's this game at?
At USC.
This is in
Huskies favored by a field goal, just like UCLA is favored by a field goal here.
Interesting. Yeah. I don't know what it is about Alex Grinch, because people are saying, well, USC, they don't have all the guys on the roster. I felt like they went into the transfer portal and they got a bunch of guys on the defensive side of the ball. I thought USC was supposed to be one of the top teams in the country in year 2 under Lincoln Riley. And someone asked me, they're like, do you compare I went on Pac-12 Sirius XM radio and they asked me, how do you compare Lincoln Riley to Jed Fish and Jed Fish's ability to turn it around? And I'm like, I think Jed Fish is more impressive because the program was very bare. There was nothing in the cupboards, Mother Hubbard's cupboards, as they say. And Lincoln Riley, he's going to a situation where he had a little bit of talent. I mean, it's pretty easy to have talent at USC, even when Clay Helton wasn't winning games. And I feel like at USC, with your resources and your Lincoln Riley and just your presence, I feel like you can turn things around in 2 years. And for some reason, in year 2 of this thing, the defense just isn't playing well. So
neither is the offensive line.
Long-winded answer: Washington wins and covers.
I think Washington wins and covers. I think if you're an Arizona fan, you need Washington to win and cover. Because if you're
can you explain that real quick?
If you're holding out hope for any Pac-12 championship aspirations, I mean, again, I know it's insane.
You want Washington to go undefeated,
you need
right?
Washington to go undefeated because you need everyone else to start losing here and there to allow a 2-loss Arizona team or 1-loss, I guess, conference Arizona team.
Okay.
No, it's 2.
Oh, 2, sorry.
Yeah, Washington and USC.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah.
The problem is USC is also a tiebreaker loss for
right.
For Arizona,
that's why USC has to lose. USC can't lose, and then if USC wins, Arizona's Pac-12 championship game hopes, as slim as they are pretty much done. Yeah. If USC wins, because then they're both at 1 loss and they both are on the tiebreaker.
Right, and if USC loses, that helps.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm taking USC in this game.
This is the kind of game they would win.
Yeah, it kind of doesn't really make a ton of sense. They're not playing very well, but neither is Washington.
Yeah.
Lately, they've been a little bit off. They barely beat Stanford. They barely beat ASU. Some people are saying that Michael Penix is injured. He's not 100%. And sometimes, they say styles make fights, right? Washington's not a team that's going to run the ball down USC's throat. They're more of a finesse type of team. So I think USC can match up with them athletically. So it doesn't make a lot of sense, but I'm going to take USC and take those points.
Is Penix, in your opinion, in the Heisman race still?
Yeah.
Even though they're undefeated?
Depending on how things go.
Okay, because I feel like this could be a Heisman moment for him.
It could. Yeah. Bo Nix is also rising up the charts in the Heisman race for sure. All right. So we have our third Pac-12 Networks game of the day. This is Stanford at Washington State. The Cardinal are getting 13 points. This game kicks off at 6 p.m. in Pullman. I don't have a ton of analysis on this, other than this is the get-right game for the Cougs.
Yep.
Back in the friendly confines of Martin Stadium. I will lay the 13 points. I'll take Washington State.
Cougs win. Stanford, I don't get them. This game's in Pullman. Washington State has looked bad the last couple of weeks. However, I think it's more of a slump rather than them having a fluky start. I think this is a really good team. They're well coached by Jake Dickert. I'm going to get the Cougars to win and cover. Do it. Pick Stanford. You know it. You want to do it.
I do.
So do it.
just have no confidence in Stanford.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what we all. But that's what we all said last week.
I think Washington.
And they almost won.
Washington State wins. Stanford covers.
Attaboy. I like when the third person goes against the flow. I'm not saying that's the only reason I took USC, but I don't know. I kind of dig it.
Speaking of Flo,
Oh,
see
yeah.
Justin Flo's Halloween costume?
I did.
Flow
the
Zone.
Flow Zone. Yes, I did. That's a good one. That's a good one. And was it Incredibill?
Yep.
Bill Norton.
Bill Norton.
It's good stuff. Yeah. Okay. Shockingly enough, Colorado's on ESPN again. Couldn't have seen that coming.
Wow.
Yeah, they're
big is
hosting.
kickoff?
They are hosting Oregon State. This is a 7 p.m. kickoff. The Beavs are favored by 13.5 in this game at Boulder. Oregon State come in at number 16 in the first CFP rankings. I'm going to take Oregon State in this game. I know that they had a stumble last week against Arizona, and Colorado did have a backdoor cover against UCLA, which was nice. But if you look at the stats for that UCLA-Colorado game, I mean, UCLA had 487 yards and Colorado had 242.
Wow.
And I think a bunch of those came on that last drive where it was kind of garbage time. I think Oregon State's just going to pound them in the trenches, beat them up physically. Damian Martinez is going to rush for like 200 yards, and Oregon State's going to kind of get back on track and cover the 13.5.
The offensive line is as advertised at Oregon State. Very impressive what they did against Arizona's stout defensive line. So I think Oregon State, I mean, really, there were a few things that happened in that game that could have swung in favor of Oregon State, and the Beavers could have easily won that game against Arizona. I think just a couple of coaching mistakes, they'll learn from it. They'll go on the road. I think they'll take care of Colorado. I like them to win and cover. Colorado, make sure your doors are locked on your locker room. I don't know if you guys heard about that.
Oh, yeah.
But you had chains and all sorts of other jewelry stolen from their locker
Yet
room.
another knock on the Rose Bowl as a regular
At the Rose
season
Bowl.
venue. Brett, your favorite place.
I love the
Stuff
Rose Bowl.
stolen from the locker room.
So, yeah.
OSU to win and cover?
OSU to win and cover. Yep.
All right, Brett, what you got?
OSU to win and cover.
Yeah.
I don't think Colorado's any good.
All right, that leaves the big one here in Tucson. It's homecoming. It's a whiteout. Something might be in the works uniform-wise that we haven't seen yet. I don't know. There's been a lot of hints about it in some of their marketing. Maybe some sort of cactus type of logo, desert ghost type of uniforms.
That's what I was thinking of when we kept saying Desert Ghost. I'm thinking of the thing they put out with the.
Yeah, by the way, Desert Ghost is a nickname that people tried to give to Khalil Tate.
Now,
And it didn't really stick, but
one
now it's
guy.
kind of funny.
One guy.
Now it's kind of funny, so we use it. Maybe they will break out the Desert Ghost uniforms for the whiteout. I would personally love to see the all whites versus the uniforms that UCLA wore last week. Those are awesome. Those throwbacks, so nice. As mentioned, the Bruins are favored by 3. Arizona once again is an underdog in its home stadium. Arizona is once again facing a top 20 team. And I am once again picking Arizona to win this game. I think it's going to be really hard. I think it's going to be very similar to last week's game. It's going to be a grinder of a game, back and forth. It's going to be really tough. But I think they're going to find a way. I think the crowd's going to be a big factor. Again, like if this game wasn't here, I don't know if I'd pick the Wildcats. But I like the vibe. I like the confidence with which they're playing. I think they can at least kind of hold serve in that matchup against the pass rushers. So I'm taking the Wildcats.
First one to 30 wins, in my opinion. And
That's what Oregon State said last week.
Yep. So with that being said, I'm going to go with the final score being 34-28. That is the final score from last year's game at the Rose Bowl. I think Arizona is going to duplicate it somehow, some way. They'll do 34-28, and that will be the last 2 stamps against the Bruins as conference opponents. Arizona's going to go to their house in the Rose Bowl, beat them, which, I mean, is a big deal. Like I said earlier, I mean, you never know if Arizona's ever going to play in a Rose Bowl ever again, or if they're ever going to play against UCLA on the road. So that was a big one last year. I think this year, I think it would be very monumental for this game to be the one that gets them over the hump and into a bowl game for the first time in 6 years.
I'm going to Bob Barker you and say 35-28 Arizona.
Okay.
I think Arizona wins and
Yeah?
covers. I think it's going to be tight. All the things you guys have said, I think I think Lev's points about it's going to be a slog. I think if Arizona falls down in the fourth quarter like they did against Oregon State, it was only 12 seconds in, but if that happens, that's trouble. I don't see a fourth quarter 2-touchdown sort of takeover, which, really, really was impressive, despite the late touchdown that Oregon State had, like to just own 9 minutes of clock in that quarter and score twice and so on.
One of the most
But I don't think that's going to happen again if they do. So they've got to get a lead in the third quarter and then basically just stranglehold it. So
one of the most deceptive stats you'll ever see is that fourth quarter was 14-14 with Oregon State and Arizona. But that's only because, right? Oregon
scored
State
in the first 12
scored on like
seconds
the first or second play, and then they scored at the end. But in between, Arizona owned that fourth quarter.
Defensively too.
Oh yeah.
They scored, took the ball
like
back,
3 and
scored
out,
again.
punt return, score, defensive stop, punt return, score. So Arizona beat UCLA last year. They beat them on their home field. They had Dorian Thompson-Robinson and Zach Charbonnet on that team. They don't have those guys anymore. Maybe their defense is better than it was. They're certainly not. I don't think they're a better offensive team. They had Bobo too.
Yeah.
Well,
and also one thing
who's
about
playing
them,
really well for the Seahawks.
It was really head scratching to see last year. Charbonnet, they were actually running the ball very well against Arizona, and then they backed away from it for some reason.
Maybe Chip's got too many weapons or too many ideas going on there. Have we seen a team really, really stick with the run against Arizona? I felt like Oregon State was running well early too, and kind of went away from it.
Then they put Aiden Childs in, and everything returned to chaos.
There's so much chaos.
I don't know. Jonathan Smith, not a great week for him last week, but a very good coach. As is Chip Kelly, as is Jed Fish. So great matchup, I think. Justin, we'll let you take it out here. We'll let you take us home.
That's it?
Yeah, that's it.
We're all picking Arizona?
We are. Again, for the second week in a row.
Oh, man. Okay. Arizona versus UCLA, 7:30 p.m. kickoff on FS1. Be sure to follow us on Tucson.com and the Wildcaster mobile app. And as always, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and comment the Wildcast podcast.
When you're in winter's favorite town, the snow-covered mountains surround you. A historic Main Street charms you. And every day brings a new adventure. Welcome to Park City, Utah. Naturally, winter's favorite town. Join the experience at visitparkcity.com.